Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another video on HVSBL podcast. Today I'm joined by Professor Jason Staples, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what he's presenting, or you were responding to something at SBL. You're doing a response. Was that right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Raymond Morehouse did a really interesting piece on the question of sacrificial atonement in the Torah and in Jewish tradition, and whether or not what kinds of sins that kind of system worked for. And he put that in conversation with Paul's phrase, the works of the Torah or works of the law, ergato nomo. And he argues that when Paul uses this phrase, which people like James Dunn, Tom Wright, others like that have argued refer to a limited set of things that are boundary marking actions, things like that, boundary marking regulations, so circumcision, food laws, things like that. What Morehouse did is he went back into the Torah itself, into the Greek translation of the Torah, and decided to take a look for the word erga, or ergon, which is the word for work, to find out what the Torah defines as work, and argued that that category of stuff, whatever the Torah defines as work, is most likely to be considered by Paul works of the law, works of Torah. And it's kind of surprising that nobody has really systematically done that before. It's a good example of how there's always more work to be done, that scholarship is ongoing, and people aren't just doing this for no reason. There seems to be a lot more to find. And it was a really interesting paper, because what he concluded is when you go to the Torah, the things that are most associated with the phrase work are things having to do with the sacrificial cult. So the work of the tabernacle, of later on the temple, outside the Torah, when the tabernacle is converted, when they move to a temple, all of those things. So the sacrificial cult, the temple apparatus, and all that goes with that stuff is most frequently called work. Most of the things in the Torah that refer to work are referring to that. And he argues that one of the things that Paul is actually referring to when he's referring to the works of the law or works of the Torah, he's actually saying that the system of atonement and getting back on right terms with God after sin, after certain kinds of sin specifically, that does not function, that doesn't work in the context of what in Jewish tradition is called the sin of the high hand, or high-handed sins. So things like idolatry and blasphemy, things that are intentional sins against the deity, as opposed to you steal from someone, something like that. Well, restitution and sacrifice paired together, there is atonement for that. You can set things right. But if you intentionally sin in these ways against God, you can't just give him a gift and make an offering and be right with God. There's no prescribed offering for the sins of the high hand. For those things, the only thing that the law actually mandates is death or extirpation, so being cut off from the people. And he argues that this is what Paul's referring to, and he says that the works of the Torah, the works of the law, don't justify. He's saying that in the context of a covenant that's been broken due to idolatry and all of that, you can't buy your way back in by sacrifice and offering. And so that was the paper that I responded to, and I basically concluded in my response that it was a very compelling argument. I wanted to see more in terms of some of the specificity, some of the clear examples from various. He actually brought in the Book of Jubilees and some other things to show that they're reading the Torah this way. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more on some of that, but I found it a very compelling argument, and said as much in my response, which was short response, but a good opportunity to talk over some what I think is cutting edge research.
how does Paul view Israel? How does Paul view that and the Jews? Like, what is Paul's understanding of all that?
Well, Paul seems, I mean, again, we're going off of his letters, so we're reconstructing as best as we can, seems to understand Israel and the Jews in largely the same way that most of his contemporaries do. So he seems to think that that Israel is a superset, a superordinate category that is larger than the Jews alone, of which the Jews are a subset, and that Israel itself as a whole, as a 12-tribe entity, has at some point, and you're looking at the biblical record primarily for this, broken covenant with God, going, even into the Torah, there's a breach of covenant in these ways. And as a result, needs that, what he calls justification. They need to be given a new heart in order to be in full right relationship with God and to gain the ability to do the things that the Torah pointed to but was unable to empower. And so he talks a lot about those things. And I think he also thinks that the majority of Israel was scattered by Assyria. And these are non-Jews. These are people from other tribes of Israel. And this was a very common view in the first century. It's still a common view in Orthodox Judaism that the bulk of Israel was scattered by the Assyrians, and that they were not Jews, but rather from these other tribes, and that at some point there's going to be a restoration that involves the reunification of that people with the Jews, who all are in some way made righteous or empowered to do what's right by God, so that they can perpetually be in covenant with God, and that when they love him, if you go to Deuteronomy 30 verse 6, for example, it says, when all these things have come upon you, and both the blessing and the curse, the Lord will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your seed, so that you will love him, or so that you will love him and live. And Paul understands that and live as a eschatological life, as a larger picture, eternal thing than than just the mundane, everyday, like, oh yeah, I'm alive right now, and thankful for it. Actually, he's talking about something else. He's talking about they will actually gain the capacity to fulfill the Shema. They will love the Lord, and therefore they will live in this cosmic, celestial sense.
What is Paul's goal involving Israel and the Jews? Is he trying to reconcile them at all with Gentiles and bring them all under Christ? Is that what he means in Galatians when he says everyone's one? It doesn't matter if you're Jew, Gentile, free, slave, everyone's one under Christ.
Yeah, I do think that he understands, he thinks, again, as far as I can tell, he thinks that the bulk of Israel, when they were scattered by the Assyrians, intermarried with the nations. And so the thing about intermarriage is, give it 3-4 generations, and any sort of ethnic distinction within a given people disappears, essentially. You become a wholly new people. So, the United States is a great example of this. You had, Irish and Italian immigrants in the late 19th, early 20th century. And by and large, in the United States, the descendants of those immigrants they're just Americans. Some of them have some sense of, like, I used to be Italian, or my ancestors were Italian or whatever on this side of the family or whatever, but they're not really Italian. Like, they eat pizza on Fridays, something like that. And that's not Italian. And then you give it 800 years and that gets even bigger. So that's an even bigger distinction. By 800 years, you don't know who I certainly don't know who my ancestors were 800 years ago. You probably don't know who your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were on, both sides of the family and, working its way out. So that you become a part of a new people, essentially, when that happens. And I think Paul understands that as having happened to the bulk of Israel, of especially those from the northern tribes of Israel. And at the same point, he thinks that even that remnant of Israel that has kind of become alloyed, if you will, within the nations, that remnant of Israel is still heir to the promise in some sense, that the promise still extends to those people even after infidelity and all of that, and that's something that effectively gives the God of Israel authority over all the nations into which they've been assimilated and alloyed, as it were. And so now the God of Israel is laying claim to all the nations, and therefore in Christ, those who come into Christ, into the Messiah of Israel, those people are without distinction, neither Jew nor Gentile, because the whole thing is being broken down into one people. So I do think that that's largely accurate. Now, I think he leaves room for local difference in practice. I think I don't think he's discouraging a traditionally Torah observant Jew who has always kept the laws of kashrut, of dietary laws, and who ordinarily would circumcise his son on the 8th day, these sorts of things. I don't think Paul is discouraging those people from those practices, but I do think he's allowing for local variation, and he's saying for the person who ordinarily wouldn't have done that because that person was from the nations, there's really no reason for that person to do those things because that's now no longer what it means to be in the covenant. So that, I think, is what he's doing, and he sees that as the actual way, the means of Israel's larger scale restoration.
So how does Paul go about, like, figuring out, okay, that person over there is a descendant of what you were just saying, assimilated Jews into other ethnicities, versus someone that comes in and isn't part of that at all, and that still comes under Christ? Do they somehow become Israel? Do they it spiritually? Or is that how he goes about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not assimilated Jews, right? This is people from the non-Jewish tribes of Israel that have generally assimilated. Though I'm sure, there were some from Judah who did this, in those, centuries or whatnot. I don't think Paul is concerned about going around and identifying people as, well, do you have Israelite DNA in you? Is this the concern? Like, he's okay. Well, let's look back in your genealogy far enough, and if we do, we're going to find an Israelite here somewhere. Oh, look, he's got a Yah Theophoric. There you go. You're in. It's not like that, I don't think. He is understanding this as these people, the ethnic group of, say, Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, has essentially been that ethnicity, that ethnic tribe, has died. Right? This is not about identifying people who are walking around as Reubenites and just don't know it. This is about the tribe of Reuben died because they were swallowed up by the nations. But they're still in the nations, sort of as bones. They're there, but they're part of a newer group. They're worked into this in a way that is inextricable with anything else. And so I don't think this is a matter of okay, that guy over there must be Israelite stock. No. That's not it. What he's doing is he's saying the people who receive the pneuma, the spirit of Jesus. So the metaphor of pneuma is, and I'm not sure how much of it actually is a metaphor really, but the metaphor of pneuma is like wind or breath. The substance, the thing that makes you alive, that vivifies you, that distinguishes you from a corpse, is that you breathe. Well, you then receive this breath or this spirit from Jesus that is his spirit from Jesus. And I think Matthew Thiessen has exactly the right metaphor for this, that for the person who receives this pneuma from Jesus, who has, by ascending to heaven, now the authority and the capacity to put a different kind of wind or spirit into you, that's what he sees as happening. And that wind or spirit connects you with Jesus. And now you become ethnically transformed from what you were before. So these people become Israelites. But they become Israelites because they're this material substance of spirit that Jesus puts into them, that is a new spirit that changes their heart. And the heart also, this is a fun thing for Paul to be able to use. It's convenient that in Greek, the thumos is the pneumatikos part of the person. It's the spirited part of the person. And what Paul sees is he sees the promise in Ezekiel, for example, that God will give his people a new heart and a new spirit. The spirited part of the person is going to change. And then that person, in so doing, it's like they've become and again, this is Matt Thiessen's example, they've received a DNA transplant in modern parlance. That they now have the DNA of Israel's Messiah. And Israel's Messiah, his life, the qualitative aspect of what makes Israel's Messiah is now in them. So now they've become ethnically transformed by becoming spiritually, and that word does not mean for them what it often means for a modern audience, for whom spirit is like the opposite of matter, and it's kind of distinguished from what is natural. For him, these domains are kind of overlap in a way that don't generally for a modern audience. By receiving that, the person becomes ethnically transformed and they become an Israelite. And at that point, it doesn't really matter who your ancestors were. This has become, like, God has recreated an Israel. And so it's similar to like John the Baptist in the Gospels, where you have, God can create, descendants for Abraham from those stones. Well, that's what Paul sees as happening. But this comes from the substrate or the substance of the nations, because the nations are where Israel went to die, essentially.
Got it. So like you just said, regardless of who one's ancestry is or not, Paul doesn't care about that. If you're in Christ, you're going to get transformed. Your ethnicity has changed, and you are now of Christ. You're of that seed spiritually. It doesn't matter your ancestry. And that being said, I have Jason Staples' books in the Amazon affiliate links in the description below in the pinned comments. You can go buy them. And with that being said, thank you for joining me today, Jason.
Thank you so much, Jacob. This was fun. It's a good opportunity to meet you in person too.
Yeah. And it was nice to meet you in person too, Jason. Thank you.
Hello viewers, thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron. And or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during your live stream. Thank you.